Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel, Witch Ways. I'm Colette, and today I'm here to talk all about Samhain. Yay! We're finally here! If you're watching in 2024, this year is going to be a very powerful Samhain gate because the new moon is on Friday, November 1st in the evening, which means that the moon is going to be dark and absent from the sky until about the 2nd or 3rd. So that will make it extra powerful. Perfect time for witching magic. And I'm going to start by sharing a few thoughts about what Samhain is, what it isn't, etc. And if you know all about that already, I've time-stamped this, so just feel free to go ahead and skip that part. Let me know in the comments what your favorite magical practices are for Samhain. I really hope you enjoy, all you wonderful witches out there. In Northern and Western European cultures, Samhain marked the start of the beginning of the dark half of the year. In Celtic countries, particularly in Ireland, this was a super important time. It was one of the 4 fire holidays that marked the year. Samhain in October, Imbolc in February, Beltane in May, and Lunasa in August. It really marked a shift from that kind of outward expansion of the upper half of the year where people would go to markets and fairs and meet with friends and have celebrations to a more inward time that was spent with storytelling, gathered around the fire with close family and community, and hunkering down for the winter. It was seen as a very liminal time where the veil was thin between the worlds and the spirits could pass through easily to either visit or cause trouble. In the Americas, European colonizers forcibly converted local indigenous people to Christianity. In Mexico area in particular, they fused the Aztec holiday honoring the Lady of the Dead and turned it into All Souls Day. It was generally, historically, as far as I know, a much more celebratory festival and occurred around late July and early August and was much, much more than just the Mexican version of Halloween. It has its own strong background and rituals. In some areas in Europe, there were very large bonfires and festivals to celebrate the end of the holidays and to eat or preserve any of the livestock that could not be nurtured through the winter. In some places, any crops that were not yet harvested from the field by Samhain were left for the spirits and were seen as belonging to them. Let's talk a little bit about that dark moon. In general, dark moon is good for divination, communicating with spirits, and magic relating to the underworld. For some witches, that's the time that they practice baneful magic. And so when you combine a dark moon with the beginning of the dark half of the year and the holiday of Samhain, you're going to have a really powerful magical flow. I would definitely take advantage of that this year. And if you're someone who occasionally likes to celebrate with other people, this is a great year to do it. So here's a few things that I would do this year, and I do have a lot of other videos that I've done in the past couple years around Samhain that I will link. One of the first things that I'm going to do is to charge a whole bunch of candles to use at Samhain. And I'm going to start by cleansing them. And the way that I do that is just throw a whole lot of them in a basket and bulk cleanse them by holding them over my cauldron filled with some burning rosemary. After I've cleared them, I'm going to charge a few of them for the purposes of divination, and I'm just going to do that by passing them over the smoke of some burning mugwort, and I'm going to charge some of them with the power of honoring my ancestors and my beloved dead, and I'm going to do that by passing them over my honoring blend. And that blend is going to be 3/4 parts myrrh for the honoring part and 1/4 part cinnamon for bringing spirits closer and conjuring spirits, and a few rose petals just for beauty and to symbolize the love that I hold for my beloved dead. And the third group of candles that I'm going to make is probably just going to be about honoring this magical turning point of the year of Samhain. And I'm going to anoint these with dark moon water that I'm going to make and talk about in a few minutes. And starting around the 29th, I'm probably going to burn one of those every night until a few days after Samhain. If I get really ambitious, I'm going to cut some apples horizontally so that the little pentacle star in the middle shows, and either place them on a plate around my Samhain honoring candles, or maybe even put a candle in the middle of one of those apples, keeping a really close eye on it so that I don't catch things on fire. I'm also going to be doing a big group ritual for my whole school with my students, and one with my Patreon subscribers as well. And so I'm definitely going to burn those Samhain candles that night. I say this every year at Samhain in all my Samhain videos, but I like to set up an ancestor altar dedicated to my whole and healthy ancestors and my beloved dead, and that includes animal companions. I like to use white pumpkins rather than the orange ones to symbolize the spirit world on my altar. And pumpkins are from the Americas, but that is what's commonly used these days for jack-o'-lanterns. And the holiday of Samhain emerged from Western Europe, and the name comes from Irish tradition. And there, people typically would have used larger root vegetables like overgrown beets or turnips, even mangels, which are a large beet-like root that was commonly given to livestock. And I've seen pictures of them. I've never tried to do it. Maybe I'll try to do it this year, but it really kind of looks more like a face because it's all wrinkly, and it's kind of great. I want to try it some year. These traditional European roots were carved out with faces, just like we do with jack-o'-lanterns, and then candles were placed inside, and their purpose was to protect people from the unquiet dead or the malicious dead. This year, I'm going to make a special section of my altar for honoring the witches of the past, and I'll probably write down a prayer for them or a blessing for them, something along the lines of, I honor you and I thank you for the work you did to keep the craft alive so that I can work with it today. And then I'll read that aloud and light one of my honoring candles. And then I'll make some offerings of them of hazelnut cordial, which I mentioned recently. And I always try to make my own, but you can also buy it commercially. It's called Frangelico. And when I do that, I like to keep in mind that people from lots of different cultures do not like the term witch because they had their own terms for magical and spiritual healers and people. Also, the word witch was used really commonly to demonize people from non-European or non-Christian cultures. So in addition to honoring the witches, I will probably ask that the spirits of those wisdom keepers who practiced and kept the spirit of their faith alive be remembered and honored on this night. Every year I put up pictures of my ancestors and my beloved dead, and I read a list of those who have passed this recent year. And if I have enough time, something I really want to do is to make an apple and pear crisp to eat with my ancestors. I'm going to add cinnamon to help connect to them. I'm going to add some ginger to help them remember the spice of life, and some nutmeg for enhanced communication. And that memory of apple and pear crisp helps me remember my own mother. My mother did not love to cook, but she really appreciated good food. So when a sweetie started bringing me bags of surplus apples to use, she encouraged me to find ways to use them, gave me some basic recipes to start with, and just let me go from there. So it directly connects me to her, and I remember her and honor her when I make that and eat that. I might even put a birthday candle on it to honor her and let it burn out before I eat the crisp. Because because this is such a powerful year, I want to make some dark moon water at Samhain, and I've talked about how to do that before, but here's a brief recap. What you do is you take a cleared and warded mirror, place it on the ground outside, put a clear glass bowl on top of that, pour some water into it, and if you have a lot of critters around, you might want to put a clear glass plate over the top of it to protect it from animals or raccoons washing their dinner in your moon water. Although that might be kind of interesting as well, I don't know. And then leaving it out until you get up in the morning, ideally before sunrise. I also think you could just leave it out for a few hours and bring it in because it's such a powerful conjunction of energies this year. If you want to keep it more than a few days, take whatever amount of water you have and then add that same amount of brandy or vodka to your moon water and keep it in a jar. I mostly keep mine in the fridge, but it should be fine. I think they keep for 6 months to a year. Samhain's also a really good time to clean and re-protect your mirrors in the household. I have several small round craft mirrors that I use in my magic, and I'm going to just sprinkle some water on them with a rosemary branch front and back, or maybe I'll make a weak rosemary tea and rub them with that with a damp cloth and then dry them carefully, either after I rinse them in clear water or just using a cloth, depending on what kind of frame my mirrors are in. After I've cleared my mirrors, then I'm going to ward them. And there are a lot of really elaborate ways you can do this, but I like to keep it simple. So one simple way that you can do it is to put some water on your finger or use a pen to draw a pentacle with a circle around it on the back of your mirror, and then use some water or some rosemary tea to do the same thing on the front of the mirror. And you can just hold the intention as you do this that the mirror is locked and protected from any harmful spirits. And even just using your finger without anything on it at all and focusing on that thought will really help. Another thing that I like to do at Samhain is to clear all my divination decks very thoroughly. So I like to burn some blue vervain on some charcoal and then pass each of my decks through the smoke front and back several times, maybe even card by card, depending on how much they've gotten used by others this year. And when I'm done, I might then pass them through the smoke of some mugwort to recharge them for the coming year of divination work. I always say this at every holiday, but I think it's a great time to just reassess and check out the protections, the herb bundles, the little charms that you have up to protect your space. If you don't have the ability to just sense whether they're still potent, kind of figure that if they're 6 months old, they probably need to be renewed. But if they look dusty or dingy before that, you might want to renew them. And I also want to say that you might want to consider charging your Samhain decorations that you put up outside or around your house with some kind of energy. For instance, that could be protection. This year, interestingly enough, I'm seeing a lot of spider webs as decorations around town, which is great. But I'm seeing a lot of people put them kind of horizontally over spaces like driveways that go down. And when I look at that, it just feels like it's collecting stagnant and negative energy that is not great to have around. So my thought on that is, why don't you place them more vertically and charge them with protection as you're tacking them up or putting them up, just asking that it be used to repel and move away and disperse any harmful spirits. I know we all have a lot of amazing traditions out there, and I'd love if you put them in the comments. And I also wanted to remind you that I am running a Patreon special this month, and you get extra benefits by signing up now. And I'll put a link to that in the description. And I'd really appreciate it if you can to consider supporting me, even if it's just for a few months, because it is what makes this channel possible for me to do. Thank you all for watching, liking, and commenting and sharing on my videos. I'm wishing you a wonderful and happy Samhain season. And until next time, stay safe and be well.